You're listening to the SeaBears podcast. Okay, so this morning my wife and I were kind of, killing time with a cup of coffee, and we came across this video, which was rebroadcast off from TikTok, about this gentleman where at the beginning he says that he was glad that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, but as you continue to listen to him, it becomes very heartwarming and informative. And at the end of it, my wife looked at me and she goes, well, where do these people get their facts from? And I'm going to go into that conversation after you watch this TikTok video. Now, if you've already seen it, I'll put the timestamp on the screen where you can skip forward and not have to listen to it again if you don't want to. But listen to this guy.
Actually glad that Charlie Kirk was murdered, but probably not for the reason you think. I was at work when I first found out. A fellow employee had wandered up to me, cell phone in hand, and asked, "Did you hear that Charlie Kirk just got assassinated?" And I, without even a moment's hesitation, responded, "Good! Fuck that Nazi white supremacist piece of shit!" I had never before witnessed such a perfectly blended expression of disgust, disappointment, sadness, and surprise, all through the window of another man's eyes, or experienced a silence so uncomfortable as the one that followed. And although that look on his face now haunts me more and more with each passing day, at the time, it only made me distrustful and upset. But little did I know that the sentence which followed would end up becoming the most profoundly psychologically impactful question that I've ever been confronted with. Have you ever actually watched any of his debates? I decided to end the conversation immediately. This man was clearly a lost cause, one of those intellectually dishonest Kool-Aid drinking types who refuses to engage in good faith with any perspective which contradicts their outstandingly narrow and propagandized worldview. And by this man, I mean me. Because I hadn't actually watched any of his debates. I was basing literally every single thing I believe about a human being with thousands of hours worth of publicly available recordings of himself openly expressing his opinions on a small handful of out-of-context clips that had been curated for me by algorithms and media organizations being funded by the political opposition. I foamed at the mouth, right along with the rest of those rabid and bloodthirsty dogs, gleefully mocking those who had been saddened by his death and downplaying the atrocity of it all by suggesting that political violence is just an unfortunate yet necessary step toward our coveted socialist revolution, that is, until I began to notice a common thread. The exact same comment being repeated ad nauseum in nearly every single online space. Have you ever actually watched any of his debates? I didn't think much of it at first. Of course right-wingers are all regurgitating the exact same talking point. They're in a cult. They're brainwashed. It was an ordinary and boring morning on the day I found out that I am a monster. In that moment where my curiosity got the best of me and I decided to click on some random YouTube thumbnail of Charlie Kirk with his goofy and gummy smile in an attempt to reaffirm my preconceived biases. And it was an unusually stressful afternoon on that very same day when I spoke to my father for the first time in years, despite the fact that he had always loved and supported me unconditionally. And it was a never-ending sleepless night, coming to terms with the fact that literally every single thing I thought I hated about the right, the bigotry, stupidity, violence, vitriol, and narrow-mindedness, was actually just an outward projection of hatred toward my own self. Charlie Kirk is my hero. He opened my eyes to the cruel and manipulative nature of our political media, brought my family back together, and taught me how to love again. And to anyone who takes issue or offense with that, I'm going to do exactly what he would have done, and challenge you to answer a simple, honest, and straightforward question. Have you ever actually watched any of his debates?
Now, it probably comes as no surprise to anyone who's listened to any of my content. I was a fan of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a very peaceful man who only wanted to open up dialogue. He wanted to talk to people. He was never vicious, angry, cruel, mean, sadistic, insulting, or condescending in any way. Again, have you ever watched any of his videos? But when my wife and I watched that video, she like I said earlier, right? She looked at me and she goes, "Well, where do these people get this opinion from?" And I said, it's an interesting question. I said, I think the difference between these leftists and I believe the majority of the right, I could be wrong, I know this is the way I operate, is that they build a social structure about themselves. The leftists do, and even the right. The right does it too. People want to be around people who believe as they do. But the difference, I think, is that the left wants to silence the free speech, and they only want to hear their side. They want to be in their little echo chambers. Go back and watch, the video is the true truth, but or the echo chambers of social media. Where I believe that the right is more open to conversation, debate, and trying to reach the common consensus. Now, I will. I'm going to relay a story. Last week, my daughter, she got some pants at a consignment, and they were too long, and so she and I went to this tailor to have her pants hemmed, and I had a pair of pants that needed some work done on them. Jeans, they always tear on that back pocket, and I wanted them patched because they're my favorite jeans. But anyways, while we were in there, it was actually on Tuesday last week. We had a runoff election here in Georgia, and we were wearing our "We Voted" stickers that we got. And this gentleman asked me, if I voted, today rather than voting early. I said, yeah, and we started up a conversation. And during this conversation, it circled around, SeaBear standing on his little soapbox. I started talking about how Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister of Hitler's, would say, he repeatedly said that if you tell a big enough lie often enough, people will come to believe it. And I also said that during the Nuremberg trials, that Joseph Goebbels made the statement that the best way to keep a population in check is through fear. And the man corrected me. He says that's not true. Joseph Goebbels died right after Hitler committed suicide. He and his wife poisoned their 6 children, and they all died. They all committed suicide. He never made it to the Nuremberg trials. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, well, wait a minute, is that right? Right? Because I'm getting old, memory fades. But I took that moment to heart, and as soon as I had the opportunity, I went and looked it up. Was I wrong, or was he wrong? And he was correct. Joseph Goebbels did in fact die the day after Hitler committed suicide. He was the Chancellor of Germany for one day, and on the day after Hitler committed suicide, and I'm gonna put it allegedly in there because there are arguments that that he never did. That's a whole nother video if you guys want to hear that one. But he and his wife poisoned their 6 children, and they all died in the Reich Gardens, the Germany Reich Gardens, the day after Hitler committed suicide. So to me, I was like, okay, I got that fact wrong. I need to fix it. So I did some more research, and it wasn't Joseph Goebbels that said it. It was Hermann Goering. I'm getting old. Goering, Goebbels, GE. It was close. I was close. They both started with a GE in their last name. It was Hermann Goering who said it at the Nuremberg trials. This is a Cliff Notes version about, you keep a population in check through fear. But what he actually was referring to is the best way to control a nation is to make the people believe that the nation is under attack. Look around, listen to what's being said today, right? We're under attack from, people who want to endanger our democracy. We hear that all the time. So that tidbit of wisdom from Hermann Goering is actually in play today. But my point is that when I was talking to this gentleman and my facts were brought into question, I sought the truth. I sought it out, and I'm correcting my views. I'm correcting my arguments, if you will. Where I believe, like this gentleman we just saw, I think that before he was pushed into watching actual videos of Charlie Kirk, that he would simply go back to his social structure that he has built around himself, who would then tell him that he is right, that he's fighting the good fight. He doesn't need to he just listen to us, right? We're telling you the way it is, and whether that's on social media or through a friend structure. And that in social media, right, you're in that echo chamber. Again, go back and watch the video on echo chambers, where the social media will continue to feed you back your belief systems based on your likes in the videos and groups that you're a member of, because they want you on that platform as long as possible. Where, you know, they don't want to be made uncomfortable. They don't want. That gentleman talked about sleepless nights when he's being confronted with reality that he had denied for so long. And I think that takes courage. That man was extremely brave and courageous to face the facts as they stand and not to fall back into the echo chambers that put him where he was to begin with. So my question to you is, where do you get your facts? Do you run to social media and your friends to be affirmed in your beliefs? Or do you actually get out a book, do fact checks, and, get the factual truth rather than supposition based on political beliefs? It's a question I think you should ask yourself. Like I said, when my facts were questioned, I sought the truth. I didn't seek comforting from my social structure that I built around myself. Because everybody does it, right? Everybody wants to feel comfortable. Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. Nobody wants to have sleepless nights because they're questioning their reality. So we all have our social groups, left or right, we all have them. The question is, where do you find your truth? Where do you find the facts? Do you find them from your echo chamber, or do you find them from documented history? That's the question for you today. Thanks for watching. If you find these videos informative, if you like hearing my voice ramble on, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm still trying to grow the channels. I'm going to post this on both of them, the Raging SeaBear and the SeaBear Speaks. Thanks for listening. This is SeaBear, out.